Hi, today I'm going to show you something interesting. I always show you something interesting, don't give me that. This is a non-turbo 606 and a question I get asked all the time is, can I turbo my non-turbo 606? How much power can I get from my non-turbo 606? How many miles can my non-turbo 606 run for until it blows up? How much fuel with my non-turbo 606 work? If I've got a non-turbo 606... I get asked a lot of questions about non-turbo 606s. Anyway, this is a non-turbo 606. So we're going to have a quick look at some of the differences between this. You're probably wondering, why is this one right up here? Because it's closer to God, of course. This is the turbo version. It's on its natural progression to heaven. It doesn't make sense that the Land Rover's higher. That doesn't tie in with the theory, but let's not worry about that. Turbo 606, non-turbo 606. So looking at this side of the block, they look pretty similar, don't they? However, let's start looking at the differences. So first of all, a non-turbo 606, this one came from a W124. 1980, W124s are 1986 to 1995, 96. However, they put non-turbo 606s in 1994 to 96 124s. 96 124s. So they only did them for 2 years. Mercedes always do this. They put the new engine in the old car body for a little while before they roll it into the new shape. So that was what this was. So how can you tell one straight away? Well, quite easily, the rocker covers on them are never painted. They're just raw aluminium. And they corrode up. Look, as you can see on the side, they corrode up. Whereas the turbo version kind of has it's like a prosthetic leg colour. It's like a light grey sort of strange colour, but they are coated. Look, it has no exit for the breather pipe. So on a turbo 606, you would have the breather pipe. Yeah, that would come from there. It'd go into a oil catch thingy that allows the oil to thingy back into the thingy. We're using scientific terms today because it's an early Monday morning. And then the pipe goes along here and then it'd come out the side and into the turbo. If it was a turbo version like this, as you can see. You see? It has the little hole in the side. But the non-turbo one doesn't. Right. So, let's look at another difference. Crankshaft, the front crankshaft pulley and damper is completely different. On a 606 NA from a 124, it has a bolt-on hub that goes onto the crank, and then the actual pulley bolts onto that. Whereas on a turbo 606, it's all one piece. It's just one complete item. I've heard these bolts can come loose. I'm just saying. Moving swiftly on. Next difference is, I've completely set these two props up wrong, but look here. On the non-turbo 606, there is nothing there. That's the oil return. It goes into the block. If you look at the turbo 606, there it is. It's drilled for the oil return to go into the block. Another thing, obviously turbo related versus non-turbo. Non-turbo, this is where the turbo oil feed would have come from. That's where it actually comes out of. Now, something interesting to mention about this. Remember, this is a 1995 engine, this. This is before the turbo 606 were ever in production or ever created. And obviously the provisions were there. So obviously from day one, this wasn't the intention. You know, that was the intention. Which is quite cool, isn't it? So have a look at that. That's where your oil feed comes from your block to your turbo. Now, if you do have, like we do, a non-turbo 606, and you want to put a turbo on it, there are some fundamental differences aside from the little bits. The block apparently is weaker, but we'll hopefully show that in this video. The rod's thinner, the pistons are slightly different. The inlet valves are often a slightly smaller shaft diameter, which is interesting. The inlet valve, sorry, the valve train springs are weaker than in the turbo version. But does this mean you can't turbo it? No, you can put a turbo on this. Just milder power levels. Or you can use some goodies from that or upgrade goodies to make this pretty much as good. So on the front, the vacuum pump. So on a Turbo 606, the vacuum pump is like this. This is the drive gear for the pump. And look on the back, that's your centrifugal system. That advances your pump timing as the RPM increases. Little centrifugal. Same on the non-turbo. And if you look, this one has this kind of like roller coaster affair. And this one has got two drive dogs. So what would happen on the non-turbo, it has like a little wheel. 603s are the same as this, by the way. The OM603 has a little pulley wheel on here. And as that spins, the wheel pumps and it pumps the vacuum pump. Those little wheels were really prone for failure. They were terrible and they used to fall apart and damage loads of stuff. So they realised that and then they put this on instead. So on this version, it's an actual, it rotates. So it engages into this dog like that when you put the vacuum pump on, and the actual pump drive rotates the vacuum pump. And that's for the later 606. I'm going to put one of these onto this, just simply because I've got it and I can't find where I call it the wanky pump. I'm sorry if that's a bit offensive language, but that is a wanky pump. This is a spinny one. So that's one difference. Another difference, oil filter housing. So oil filter housing from a non-turbo has no provisions for an oil cooler. So if you look at a turbo version, you've got your two oil cooler outlets. So if you want to put a turbo on there, where you would have your bung, which should have your oil pressure sensor, you can put a hose to feed the turbo from here. So that'd be your filter housing, get a braided line and run a line from there round to your turbo on the other side to feed it with oil. Nice easy way of doing an oil feed on a non-turbo engine. And as for the return, it's up to you. You can either drill that block bit through, because it's there, but personally I wouldn't. I'd do it in the sump, because obviously the sump you can take off, you can put your own drain in there. I think I'll probably do that for this project, just to keep it as close to what you guys at home might be doing. Injectors on the non-turbo are different. Injectors in the non-turbo are usually 115 bar. The turbo ones are 130. But generally when we upgrade this stuff, we go to 150 anyway, and the injector core bodies are the same. So the pre-chambers are slightly different, but you don't need to worry about that too much. The cams are different, but we all know that because it's internet phenomenon that the NA cams have got more lift and they make more power. It's never been proven. But anyway, it's nice to know that it's got them if you're going to have one. The head gasket's different, and you can see that if you look here. You can actually see a little piece of the head gasket sticking out there between there, look. And you can see it's a fibrous gasket. Whereas on a Turbo 606, you might be able to see somewhere around the block. You can't, well, you can just see slightly at this back corner if you look close up. It's a steel gasket. It's quite hard to tell really from the video, but it's a steel gasket, a multi-layered steel gasket. So the gasket's different. Head bolts, I believe, are different. So quite a few differences, but at the end of the day, we're not trying to turn this into that because there are a lot of differences. What we're trying to do with this is make it maybe 300 horsepower, reliably, and have some fun with it. And I think that I'm going to leave it pretty much head on as it is to do that, so that it keeps it good for the viewers. And then maybe at a later date, if something does go wrong with it, which I'm sure it won't, then I'll pull it apart and I'll put some big performance stuff in it. Is there any other differences that we need to... Oh yeah, there is. The inlet manifolds. Come on. You didn't think you'd be able to get a video without me showing my new billet inlet manifold again, did you? No. So I promised I wouldn't, but I've got to do it. I love it. So this is the NA intake manifold, and this is the turbo intake manifold. Obviously they're really wildly different. Now come and have a quick look at this. This is good stuff. If you're going to use the NA inlet manifold and not one of my beautiful billet ones, you're going to have to plug these ports, Because remember how I was mentioning about it having no hole in the rocker cover for the exhaust gases to come out the side? That's because on the NA engine, it sucks it into the inlet manifold. It sucks the crankcase ventilation straight back in. But obviously you can't do that if you turbo the engine, because if you do, what actually happens, because lots of people do this, what actually happens is the boost accumulates in the system. It blows the boost into the crankcase, and then, believe it or not, the boost ends up getting blown into the injector pump, and it pushes the stop vacuum closed. So like what happens is they're driving along, it starts to get really powerful, and then the engine just goes, ugh, and people can't get their head around it. What it actually always turns out to be is it's this being pushed from the other side by boost. So yeah, you have to block them off. Either tap them and screw bolts into them, or weld them. It's totally up to you. And also you're going to want to get rid of that valve. You're going to want to get rid of that as well. So this, have you ever heard of a twin scroll inlet manifold? I'm going to have to get a torch in there so you can see. But basically the Mercedes has a valve inside the inlet manifold that allows, if I can actually grab hold of the right bit, it actually opens this flap. So it's like a quick spool valve inside the inlet manifold, and it joins one side of the inlet manifold to the other. Isn't that cool? Isn't that cool, people? So obviously that'll probably make up for a few hundred horsepower that you've lost by it going back in the wrong direction. But the long runners obviously is double the torque. So we've got a quick spool valve inlet manifold. There are some differences between the turbo and the non-turbo. Goodbye.